Good day. Welcome to the fourth edition of Legally Brief, the fourth in a series of videos presented by the Connecticut Bar Association as part of its 150th anniversary celebration. These videos are meant for both for the members of the bar and the public concerning timely and informative topics relating to the legal profession. I am Judge Susan Peck. I recently retired as a state of Connecticut Superior Court judge after 26 years. Over the course of my judicial career, I was primarily assigned to preside over civil cases, both courtside and jury trials. I graduated from the University of Connecticut Law School, became a member of the bar in 1976. I clerked for a federal judge for 1 year and then practiced law for 18 years before being appointed to the bench. I am here today with Emily Gianquinto, a member of the bar since 2006, Meghan Burns, a member of the bar since 2010, and Mallory Thompson, a member of the bar since 2021. I'm going to ask each of them to kindly introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about their educational background, their experience, and their professional activities. So,
I'm Emily Gianquinto. I graduated from Boston University with a degree in journalism. I went to law school a few years later, graduated from the University of Connecticut School of Law in 2006, and then became a lawyer. I clerked for 1 year for the Connecticut Supreme Court and then went into private practice. I am currently special counsel at the law firm of McCarter & English in its Hartford office. I'm in the labor and employment group. I focus primarily on employment litigation on the management side. I am also currently the president of the Connecticut Bar Association.
thank you.
I'm Meghan Burns. I'm a graduate of the University of Virginia, and then I went to the University of Connecticut School of Law, graduating in 2010. I am also in private practice. I am a family lawyer and partner at Rule, Burns, Feldman, Kukuchka & Britt. And professionally, I'm the president-elect of the Hartford County Bar Association. I'm also a fellow of the Connecticut Bar Foundation and current chair of the History of Women in the Legal Profession project.
I'm Mallory Thompson. I'm a 2017 graduate of Spelman College and a 2021 graduate of the University of Connecticut School of Law. After law school, I clerked for Chief Justice Robinson of the Connecticut Supreme Court and Judge Bolden of the United States District Court. I'm currently a business litigation attorney at Robinson & Cole, as well as a faculty member for the Connecticut Judicial Branch's Civics Academy, as well as the chair of the Connecticut Bar Association's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee.
Thank you. Our purpose today is to tell you about some of our experiences and observation as women practicing law in our state. I have a series of questions for our panel members, and but first I'd like to share with you some statistics about women in the law in Connecticut. There are 3 law schools in Connecticut. For the 2024-25 academic year, there were 148 students at the Quinnipiac University School of Law, consisting of 96 women and 52 men. There were 147 students who entered their first year at the University of Connecticut School of Law, 82 women and 63 men, and 2 identifying as other or non-binary. At Yale Law School, there were 205 students who entered their first year in 2024-2025, 116 women and 59 men. There were not more women than men entering law school until just about the year 2000. In fact, it was not until the late 70s and early 80s that women began attending law schools in any significant numbers. In fact, until the last decade or so, men dominated almost every area of the legal profession. In the 150-year history of the Connecticut Bar Association, which we refer to as the CBA, between 1875 and 2025, 138 presidents have been men. Emily is the 13th woman serving in that position. All 13 women have served since 1989. Since 2017, there have been 9 presidents of the CBA. 5 of them have been women. The prominence of women in bar leadership has been recent. Now, it was not until the 1970s that the first women were appointed as Superior Court judges in Connecticut. In that decade, a total of 9 women became judges of the Superior Court. Those numbers look much different now. As of March 2025, there were a grand total of 174 Superior Court judges, 86 of whom were women, constituting 50% of the Superior Court judges. Now, for our first question to the panel. Within the next decade, given the growing numbers of women graduating from our law schools, do you think that women will overtake the legal profession? And if you have time or inclined, where are women finding the most success in your observation within the profession? So we'll start with Mallory.
Well, as we heard from Judge Peck's remarks, women have been outnumbering men in law schools for at least the last decade. So one would think that women would also be outnumbering men in partnership ranks and on the federal bench, but that's not the case yet. Both those spaces and many others, women are still underrepresented. And I think it's because I still hear many women say that they've had to pave their own path to leadership positions. And it makes sense for the path to partnership, for instance. That was paved before women were even allowed in the profession. But it's been 143 years since Mary Hall, the first woman admitted to practice, was admitted. And we are still not seeing the type of numbers we should be of women in leadership roles. So I think that women will start to overtake men in this profession when employers get serious about remedying the barriers that have always existed, remedies that need to include equitable leave policies and flexible work schedules.
Okay, thank you. Emily, you want to give us your perspective?
Sure. And like Mallory pointed out, by the numbers, we really should be overtaking men, and we're just not there yet. We've made significant gains in some places, like bar leadership. The trend in Connecticut is actually the same as the trend with the ABA, that in the last 2 decades or 25 years or so, there's been a lot more women in leadership. That just this past week, the 13th woman to be president of the American Bar Association was installed at its annual meeting. So we are seeing the same trend as nationwide. Nationwide, the numbers of judges are actually fewer than we have in Connecticut, so we're leading in some areas. But the same trend is not true, as Mallory pointed out, with respect to partnership. If just 2 years ago, for the first time, the number of first-year associates in private practice was higher for women than for men. We were just over 50%. And so since it took us that long to get from having the majority women graduating law school to actually having majority women as associates in private firms, you can tell that path is just going to be taken longer. And I agree with Mallory, it's for the same reasons, that the path was created before we were even allowed to be lawyers, and so it's going to take more work to change that path for us to really overtake in the numbers.
I really think that the benchmark really is the year 2000, when women started appearing more frequently in greater numbers in law schools than men. It may not have been every law school, but certainly now almost every law school there are more women in the first year classes than men. So, next question. Please tell us about the nature of the work that you do, and if you're passionate about your work.
So again, I'm a family lawyer, and so within family law, you deal with divorce, child custody work, and really it's every aspect of law that we deal with in family law. Because when we're helping people do their work, we're understanding how do they make their money, how do they create it. So you have to understand people's own lines of work and deferred compensation and tax implications and things like that. You have to understand if people own businesses, right, how to value them, or if people have trusts, and so we really deal with every aspect of law, in addition to the child psychology and substance abuse, mental health issues that often bring, unfortunately, individuals into our office. And so I'm really passionate about the work that I do, because I really wanted to work with individuals and help people to, really crystallize their own goals and to chart a path forward for themselves that was clear, even when it's really uncertain times. And so it's that personal satisfaction I have of helping someone to go through this really difficult process in a way that aligns with their values, that makes my work really fulfilling. And seeing these families transition in a way, that is healthier for them. So that's what I do, and that's why I do it. It's my why.
All right, Mallory, can you tell us about your work?
Yeah, I handle all aspects of business litigation, both focusing on white-collar defense and government enforcement, as well as our education industry team. And I went to law school to do either civil rights work or criminal defense. So I do love that I get to represent clients in relation to government investigations, and then also have the opportunity to have learning experiences and the resources of a large firm. I also have been really, lucky to have support maintaining a really involved pro bono practice. So I think the fact that this year I've been able to do over 160 hours of pro bono work is really a testament to the commitment of the entire firm. As an associate, that means that I have partners who are supervising that work, also committing that amount of time, which is really important to me. So I am passionate about the people I work with and the work that we're doing together.
Thank you. Emily?
So I am an employment lawyer focusing on litigation. My background's in business litigation. I kind of fell into employment law that way. I'm on the management side, so I'm dealing with a lot of contracts with employees, helping employers walk through disciplining employees, drafting their policies, enforcing their policies. A lot of the litigation I work on lately involves non-competes, people leaving and trying to steal things. Happens all the time. And so I really like employment law because, yes, I'm on the employer side, and so sometimes people think that means we're always harming employees. I actually really like being on the employer side because every dispute or every matter I get is not just about the one employee. It's also about helping the employer make sure it is using best practices, that it is enforcing rules evenly, and if something did get messed up in the process, I get to help remedy that, not just for the one employee, but for others who may be in the same situation. So contrary to what probably most plaintiff side lawyers think, on the management side, we really are trying to help employers do things better and to make sure that other employees are not facing the same problems, and are really working to try to make sure employers are following the law, which in employment law changes all the time. It changes with administrations. There's always new laws. Like I said, non-compete has been very hot lately because there's just been a trend for non-competes to be disfavored. And so that I really like employment law because it does require you to stay on your toes and to stay up with trends. And because I'm at a firm that practices nationally, to stay up on trends in all states. So I am passionate about it.
Well, thank you. Sounds like you are. Well, thank you all. Most women in my generation did not have a straight path from undergraduate school to law school. In fact, I graduated from undergraduate school in 1967. I skipped the first grade. That's why it was 1967. It should have been 1968. But anyway, and then I went to law school. I graduated in 1976. So I was one of those people in the 70s. And I didn't realize at the time that how few of us, it seemed like the natural thing that there were so few of us in law school. And the numbers, as I said, have increased exponentially since that time. So many women had careers in teaching. I worked in publishing and public relations, and I went to graduate school before law school. And after law school, finding a job with a promising career was challenging, I have to say. There were unpredictable obstacles for women. And when I started interviewing for a job after my clerkship, my interviewers, all of whom were men, commonly expressed concern about what they referred to as pillow talk. In other words, questioning whether I would be able to maintain the confidentiality of clients or would be tempted to divulge client confidences to my husband. So I'm going to ask you folks, since you are a different generation, what was your pathway to the law? and how you got to be where you are today. And what was your experience when you first began your job search as a lawyer?
So I went to college not thinking I would become a lawyer. Like, it was never my dream. My biggest dream was to become a New York Times political reporter. I also really liked marine science, so I went to Boston University because they had both of those degrees. I settled in pretty quickly on journalism. But I graduated in 3 years, and I loved school. I was a total nerd, so I knew I wanted to go back to school for something, for a graduate degree, and it was at a time where print journalism, which is what I'd been focusing on, was really going through a sea change. You know, everything was going online. There was a lot of challenge to kind of the traditional media. So I did not want to go back to grad school for journalism. Law school just really fit with my skills. I like writing. Like, the writing styles are very similar. I like talking to people. I like speaking generally. I like interviewing people and learning about them. And one of the things that appealed to me about journalism was, with every story, you're learning something new, you're becoming an expert on something. And it's the same thing with litigation. You know, if you're doing products liability, you're suddenly an expert on this one screw in a rack that fell on someone, right? So they're just, it really appealed to me because of that. They're very similar. So that's how I ended up at UConn. I took 2 years off, was working as an editor, went back to school, and I had a great time at law school. I graduated at a time that was really a boom time for lawyers, so our interviewing process was very different than yours. Fortunately, I'm glad things have changed so much. But it was a great time for on-campus interviewing. A lot of people in my class ended up going to work in big cities and big firms. There were a lot of people who got clerkships, both federal and state. And so that process was generally great for me and for a lot of my classmates. I ended up, after clerking at a giant law firm, like 1,000 lawyers. It no longer exists because I don't think that's sustainable. But I was in a very small office in Hartford. And so I kind of had the benefit of the giant firm, but the smaller group that I was working with. And so from there, I actually kind of downsized through my career, and got to smaller and smaller firms, was a solo for a while, and now I'm back at a larger firm.
Okay, thank you. Meghan.
So, interestingly enough, talking about journalism, my father was a journalist, and so he was bureau chief for the Stamford Advocate. So I kind of grew up in a household where politics and journalism, reading, writing were really part of our daily fabric. And also, my godfather was a lawyer, a lobbyist, and also political figure in Connecticut. So I grew up knowing that I wanted to be involved in politics or lawmaking in some way. And so from a young age, when people would ask me what I wanted to be in middle school, I would say a lobbyist. And because I wanted to be like my godfather, and because I really looked up to him, and I liked the idea of making laws and shaping them. And so I remember doing model government, always being like the head of the lobbyist or things like that in 7th grade. So, you know, I went to University of Virginia, and I graduated with a double major in history and American studies. And so again, throughout my undergrad, all I did was read and write, and I really loved that. And so I didn't know I was going to go to law school either. So I was contemplating either going to law school or doing like a PhD in, you know, American studies. But I decided I didn't want to be in the academic bubble forever, and that there was a lot of pressure to, you know, come up with an original thought and to create these books. And so law was still a really good degree to have, and something that I thought I'd be good at. And so I entered law school at a time when, similar to what Emily's describing, where it was a boom still. It was 2007. I went straight through from undergrad into law school, you know, going to UConn. And then the market fell out in the middle of my law school career. And so there were many of my classmates who were, you know, had summer associate positions and things like that, who didn't get offers. And so a lot of people who were part of our class who would have been kind of out of the hiring kind of process were now back in it. And so it made it even more competitive when we graduated in 2010. I had worked in DC between my 2nd and 3rd year of law school, and I had anticipated going back down there for work. That's why I'm licensed in Maryland. But in 2010, it was GC's already competitive, but now add on that people who should have been out of that hiring process were still in it. It was very difficult, and I couldn't find a job right away. And I also realized sometimes where you go to school, like how far does a name travel? So I had some difficulties, and so I ended up doing contract work for 6 months until I could then take the Connecticut bar. And then I was lucky enough where I was able to join my godfather's firm, which was a mid-sized firm doing civil litigation. And they had a family law group within it that was run by Deborah Rule, who is really very well known for doing family law, but also former appellate court judge Andrew Guinness had joined that group as well. And so they were really building something. And so they asked me to join because they needed an associate, but they said you have to really want to do this kind of law. It's not for everyone. And so I ended up joining them after doing that work in addition to some civil litigation, and have been doing family law ever since. And so I've been in a mid-sized firm, and I've also gone to a large firm here in Connecticut with Judge Darren Guinness. And then I had the opportunity when I moved around in the state to decide whether I was going to remain with this big firm or I was going to rejoin my former colleagues, the people of Rome McGuigan, at the firm I'm currently at. And so that my path has not been straightforward, but I've had the opportunity to work in mid-size, large, and small, and I've been able to choose that, even though I didn't initially end up there. And for me, having especially Deborah and Anne, they have been so formative and pivotal in helping guide my career and also make me the lawyer that I am, just from a substance and also from a substance standpoint, but also how can you practice law and be successful as a female in this area. And so, that's kind of my pathway and how I'm here, and I'm trying to continue to model that mentorship within our firm now, which has 7 lawyers. We just added one, so I always 7 lawyers, but both our associates are female. I'm the only female partner. I have 4 male colleagues, and I think that it's really important, that scaffolding, so that people can see how it's done in different ways it can be done.
Thank you. Mallory, how about you? Another generation of lawyers.
Yes. My path hasn't been exactly straight, but it's one that I've been plotting for quite some time. I've always known that I wanted to be a lawyer. And when I was 18 and a sophomore at Spelman, I enlisted in the Army and took a semester off for 2 reasons. One, to pay for school, but also because being an Army officer, it's the ultimate profession of judgment, right? And as we know, sound judgment goes a long way in this profession. So having that background before law school, it was a fairly quick path from there to Robinson and Cole. They hired me after my very first semester in law school in 2019, which I'm always grateful for, because it was before any Cali Awards, before I was editor-in-chief of Law Review and had any of my own publications, but they took a chance on me, and other than my 2 clerkships, I've been there ever since.
Yeah, great. Sounds wonderful. It's so interesting to hear you all talk about your backgrounds. It never would have occurred to me when I graduated from undergraduate school to enlist in the military, because we had a draft, and it was during the Vietnam War, and nobody wanted to be if you could. I mean, there were people obviously who enlisted and had careers in the military, but it was just something that was not in the radar. And looking back, now it makes a lot of sense that women are pursuing this path. Well, the 3 of you are in private practice, and during your times in the practice, how has it changed, or if it has changed? What do you think?
There've been a few changes. I think talking about women in private practice, I have definitely seen, as I've stayed in private practice now almost 20 years, a lot of people who I started out with from law school who were in similar paths got out at certain points. A large number of them went in-house. I have colleagues who are now on the bench, which is great. I have colleagues who went into the nonprofit sector. I have some colleagues who left private practice and went to work for the government. And so because women have left, there are fewer and fewer people, as I look around at the ranks of other Connecticut firms who are at my level, who are still in private practice. And so that's, I think that goes back to what we were talking about earlier, kind of the challenge of we're graduating in higher numbers, we're entering private practice in higher numbers, and then we're also leaving private practice in higher numbers. And so I definitely have seen, as I've moved from firm to firm, a change in attitude about how to keep women, not even how to keep women, but that it is important to keep women, and that there needs to be concerted efforts made to keep women in the path so that they are eventually going to be the leadership of firms. Some firms have been much more successful at that than others. So like Mallory's firm has done a great job. And McCarter and English, we have a number of women who are in significant leadership positions. Moya Ogilvie is our managing partner, for example. But still by the numbers, we're just not there. And so although we're not there, the efforts are noticeably different than when I entered private practice 20 years ago. Like, no one really paid much attention to how long maternity leaves were, or what happens when someone comes back from maternity leave and might not be quite ready to jump right back into that 100% litigation position. There's a lot more attention paid, and this benefits not only women, of course, but a lot more attention paid to the flexible schedules and part-time options. And not just that, but then getting people back onto the full-time path if that's what they want to do.
Okay, thank you. Meghan, you've told us a little bit about your experience in private practice, but what have you observed to be the changes?
So I think that's similar to what Emily's talked about. I think that there have been more opportunities. I think there's actually more discussions happening, right? With the fact that we're sitting here talking about these issues are something that's different even than 15 years ago when I started practicing. I think women are more open about how they're doing it and how to be successful. Because I think for so long, it was just there was one pathway, there was one formula. You have to bill your hours, you have to you check the boxes, and that's it. But I think that by having panels like this and discussions, women opening up of how did you really get there? It allows us to see that there's no one way. You can be successful in your own way in different ways. And I think that that's a change where women are talking about it, and then that helps all boats rise together. So that's, to me, a positive change that's occurred.
Thank you. Mallory, how about you?
Yeah, so I entered the profession during COVID. So it was a time of change for us all. And, COVID had its challenges, but I think one of the great things that came out of it for the legal profession was the flexibility that was introduced into all of our schedules.
So it's interesting that change in the legal profession over time in the past has not come. It has not come in great leaps of rethinking how work is performed. But it takes something like that, an experience like COVID. Even the judicial branch had to figure out, how are we going to conduct a court? How are we going to get back to work? How are we going to hear cases? How are we going to move business? We still had the same, people were still litigating their cases. They were still filing cases. How we were going to move the cases. Even if we couldn't have jury trials in the courthouse, we could have court trials remotely, and we did that, and it worked pretty well. I mean, it wasn't perfect, but they figured out how to do it, and to the credit of the people that work on the technical side, court operations, they figured out how to do it pretty efficiently. So the next question has to do with success and how, as a professional, you measure success. So we'll start with you, Mallory.
Yeah. I like to keep my measure of success fairly short. So it's less about, whether 30 years from now I'll look back and think about whether I've had a successful career, and more about, am I currently successful at what I'm doing right now? That just allows me to, focus on the quality of what's in front of me, and then at that point, just so many more doors and paths open for you, at which point my measure of success will likely change. But for right now, I get to, be proud of the work that I'm doing and the strides that I've made thus far.
Great, thank you. Megan?
So when I was an associate, especially at a mid-sized firm or a big firm, I really measured success by objective measures, right? I'm billing more hours than they expect me to. I am going to all the evening events. I was doing it all. Leading the things I'm supposed to. But now, as someone who's been practicing 15 years and being an owner of my own firm, I really measure success as by the freedom of choice. I am in a privileged place where I get to choose the cases that I work on. I'm in whom I work with and how I work. I enjoy litigation, but I really enjoy collaborative divorce and mediation, non-adversarial ways of doing that. So I have the ability to choose to take on more of those cases, right? And because I answer to myself ultimately and my partners, but that freedom of choice really is my definition of success, to do it how you want to, and also then create time for the other things you prioritize, which for me also is my family.
For me, the measure of success has changed over time. So when I was in law school, once I decided I wanted to go into private practice, I looked at success as being partner. I am not partner. I might not ever be partner, and I'm okay with that. I know more about what it means, and not everything about it appeals to me, frankly. I was a solo for a while. I did it successfully. I know if I needed to or wanted to, I could do that again. So I think it is a bit about the freedom of choice, right? I know that there are other things I could do, and if anyone from McCarter and English is watching, I'm very happy where I am. I'm not planning on making any changes, but I know that I could. I also am president of the Bar Association, which for me is a major accomplishment, and I feel like it's an indication of success. It's a success in a different way than practicing. It's a very different set of skills. It's a very different purpose. But I also, to me, that is successful in that it means I've been recognized by people in my profession as someone who is worthy of leading this voluntary association, who is worthy of working with judges and other people to improve the profession, and to handle issues that are of concern for lawyers and more broadly for the general public. We do a lot of rule of law work. We do a lot of civics education work. And that kind of work for me has become more and more important as I've become a more experienced lawyer. And so I look at whether I'm successful now more in terms of how much of that work am I getting to do, and am I helping move the needle a bit. It's very different than how I looked at it in law school.
Yeah, so I have to say, I as much as I enjoy being a civil trial judge, I loved being in private practice, and you folks are reminding me of that. There was nothing really more exciting than preparing for trial, trying a case, and then whether the case actually went to verdict or it resulted another way. It was always you always had this tremendous sense of accomplishment that you really helped somebody. You helped move a difficult situation forward. So it's a great feeling, and thank you for that. All right, what is the biggest challenge? We're gonna ask you this, put you on the spot, Megan, on this question. What's the biggest challenge you face as a lawyer?
I think that collectively, we've talked about this a little bit, but I think time is, the biggest hurdle that all of us face. Time is a finite resource, and we can't create more of it. And so we have to really think about how we're going to use the limited resource that we do have. And it doesn't look the same every day. We have to prioritize, what we're doing. And I just think that time is my biggest hurdle.
Okay, thank you. I think that goes for everybody that's on this panel, including me. For some reason, I'm retired, and somehow time is still a major factor in my life. So what would you advise a young woman who's thinking about the law as a profession. So, Mallory, what would you tell a young woman? Is it a great profession? Is it not for everybody?
Yeah, I mean, it's for everybody who wants to be a lawyer. I think you have to want it because, like Meghan was saying about time, you can't create more of it. So sometimes there are just things that you have to take off of your plate. So before entering this profession, I would really say take stock of what's important to you, what you are going to consistently prioritize, what can be deprioritized from time to time, and think about why you want to be in this profession. So I think that will be your Northern Star guiding you through all of the challenging times that the profession brings, and likely paving your own path when you're ready to ascend into leadership roles.
Emily, what would you tell a young woman?
To make sure you really
Younger woman.
Thank you. I didn't take any offense. No, I would say make sure you really want to be a lawyer, like even if you're not sure what kind of lawyer. When I went to law school, when I started in the early 2000s, there were a lot of people who went to law school just because they wanted to go to grad school for something, and a law degree was seen as something that was, you could use it in all kinds of different ways. You didn't necessarily need to practice, and so a lot of people just went right out of school into law school because they didn't know what they really wanted to do with their lives. I do not recommend that path now. It is a lot more expensive than it used to be, and B, there are just not as many jobs as there used to be. So it can be a lot harder. And so make sure that you want to do it. Before I went to law school, I had a friend who was in law school. I went to a day of classes with her to make sure that I actually liked how the law school worked. I did a lot of research about it, and so it was not an insignificant decision, probably because I was paying for it myself, but, and again, it was a lot cheaper then. So just make sure you want to do it. And then I didn't feel this way when I went to law school, and as I've gotten older and more experienced in the profession, I truly do feel this is a noble profession. I feel like we have a really strong responsibility to protect the law and to advance the law and to make sure that our laws are as fair as possible and our system is as fair as possible. And so if you're 20-something looking at going to law school, you're probably not going to feel that way, but I don't know. I talk with some people now at UConn School of Law, and I feel like there are a lot of people in this younger generation who get it, and they feel that way already, which is great. And so if there are people who are in that boat and they already feel that, do it.
Great. Thank you. And Meghan?
So, I echo everything that's actually already been said, especially about it being, a profession and calling and really wanting to do it. Because there's a lot of hard moments, right? There's a lot that you give up to go through law school. There's a lot you give up in time. But I would also say, again, even from just listening to all of our stories, right? It's a squiggly path to success, or how you define that. But it's a squiggly path. And so when opportunities are given to you, however they are, be it a door or a window, go through it and work really hard, because I think you need to have a lot of grit in order to sustain yourself in this practice. You have to be able to face adversity and difficulties and just continue to grind it out in so many ways, and also know that it's okay to fail, because many of us did well in college, did well in law school, but the thing is, you're not going to win everything, or you're not going to always be the best. The point is, when you start, you actually don't know substantively very much. They don't teach you sometimes the things you actually are going to do, and so you have to really commit yourself. And so I think that's the other part. It's the really knowing that you have to work and you have to rely upon yourself, and you have if you work harder than other people, then you will you will succeed.
Thank you. Well, I have one more last question that I have to ask, because, in the course of our preparation for this and just getting to know you three a little bit more, I think it's remarkable that that you have achieved what you have as lawyers. I mean, I think you each have a remarkable level of accomplishment. So I just want to ask you, what has driven you to that level? So let's start with you, Mallory.
Yeah, it's really this profession for me. What's at stake in a lot of the matters that we touch, I just respect that so much. And, the outcomes from it have always been worth it, whether it's landing a clerkship that I was told was out of my reach, or, getting best case scenario outcomes that we didn't think was possible. The yield has always been worth it for me to work hard, and it's not tireless, but I love to do it. And it's, like I said, it's always been worth it.
Okay, thank you. And Meghan.
I've really driven myself. I think it's the desire to work really hard and be really good at what I do, like that self-drive. But also it's the work that I do and whom I do it with. And so, really enjoying what I do and how I do it and whom I do it with, like that's what makes it, right? I want to get up and I want to go to work every day. Like I'm happy to see my colleagues. I'm happy that I work in an environment where every case we take a team approach. And so I'm not a silo, I'm not by myself. There's always at least one or two attorneys on a case with me. And so having that camaraderie is also what's driven me to that kind of collaborative team approach, which is unique and not everyone has.
Okay, Emily.
Ditto. I'm also a type A personality.
Yeah.
I also like to do very well. I also like to be in charge of things. That's why I'm president of the bar.
We probably all have some of that.
I'm sure all of us also have a problem saying no to things and to opportunities, and
I'm getting better at it.
Yeah, it's a skill. It's a skill. I'm still bad at that. So I mean that's part of it too. Is and like I was saying earlier, as I've gotten older, like for me it's a lot more about the profession too, and so I now have a really hard time saying no to things that I think are important for our profession. Particularly in recent political times, but also in this role. In terms of kind of success at the bar level, part of what I really love about this part of my career now is getting to spend more time with law students and with younger lawyers and with people who have knowledge of different substantive areas of law that I know nothing about. The only way I would get that is through the Bar Association stuff, and that's become a big part of why I enjoy being a lawyer. It doesn't really have anything to do with my day-to-day job. And so this extracurricular activity that is related to my career has really made it enjoyable for me and has made me stay committed.
Well, I'm certainly grateful that you did not say no to us in participating in this panel, and I thank you all. I know, as you're all very busy and it's difficult to carve out time for something like this, but it is important to the profession, and it's important that as well that members of the public know what we do and appreciate the value of women who are practicing law. So thank you very much.